Reports emerging from Iran indicate a rapidly evolving and highly volatile internal situation. According to claims circulating across social media, opposition networks, and some open source intelligence observers, state authority in parts of the country is under increasing strain, particularly in major urban centers. Multiple videos and eyewitness accounts suggest that control over sections of the capital and several provincial cities is being contested. Protest activity has been reported across a wide geographic range, including regions such as Baluchistan, Khorasan, East Azerbaijan, Khuzestan, Hamadan, and Tehran. Analysts note that the scale and geographic spread of these demonstrations appear broader than many previous protest waves, although independent verification remains limited due to restrictions on media access. Observers describe a notable shift in public behavior. Protesters in several locations are reportedly acting with less visible fear of security forces, chanting slogans that openly reject the current political system. Some of these slogans reference Iran's pre-1979 monarchy, indicating a symbolic rejection of the Islamic Republic rather than support for a clearly defined alternative system. Political analysts emphasize that such chants should be understood primarily as expressions of protest identity rather than evidence of a unified political movement. The Iranian government has responded with strong rhetoric and security measures. State media statements frame the unrest as riots and foreign instigated disorder, while officials have emphasized the need to restore public order. Human rights organizations and independent analysts, however, argue that confrontational language and heavy-handed responses may further intensify tensions rather than reduce them. Prince Reza Pahlavi, the son of Iran's last Shah, has issued public statements expressing readiness to return to Iran under conditions he describes as appropriate. Supporters view him as a symbolic alternative to the current system, while critics note that his actual level of political support inside Iran is difficult to measure due to censorship, repression, and the absence of free political organizing. Images and videos shared online show women participating prominently in demonstrations, including acts of defiance against compulsory dress laws. These scenes have been widely interpreted by commentators as symbolic rejections of decades-long social restrictions. Analysts stress that women's visible participation reflects long-standing grievances rather than a sudden shift driven by a single event. According to open source monitoring groups, unrest has been reported in more than 70 cities simultaneously. These claims suggest that the demonstrations are not limited to Tehran alone. Some videos appear to show protesters occupying or surrounding police stations and government buildings. However, due to information controls and internet disruptions, these developments cannot be independently confirmed in real time. In areas such as Shiraz and parts of Fars province, footage circulating online depicts confrontations between protesters and security forces, including the use of armored vehicles. Analysts describe these encounters as asymmetrical, with protesters relying on numbers and local coordination rather than weapons. The extent of territorial control, if any, remains unclear. Similar claims have emerged from Western approaches to Tehran and provinces such as Loristan, where reports suggest that members of the Basij militia were forced to withdraw from certain neighborhoods. Videos allegedly showing militia members discarding uniforms have circulated widely, though their authenticity and scale remain unverified. Strategic locations, including port cities and energy hubs such as Bushehr, have also appeared in reports claiming symbolic acts of defiance, such as the removal or lowering of official flags. Experts caution that while such acts are symbolically significant, they do not necessarily indicate sustained control or institutional collapse. Overall, analysts agree that Iran is experiencing one of its most intense periods of domestic unrest in years. Whether this moment represents a temporary surge of protest activity or a longer-term structural challenge to the state remains uncertain. What is clear, according to regional experts, is that the depth of public frustration and the breadth of participation mark a significant development in Iran's ongoing political crisis. Footage emerging from Bushehr has been widely circulated and interpreted by analysts as symbolically significant. Observers note that the reported lowering or removal of official state symbols in this strategic port city is viewed by some as a challenge to the government's assertion of sovereignty in the region. Videos and eyewitness accounts also describe fires at government linked buildings and the occupation of certain provincial offices. According to these reports, local officials were seen attempting to evacuate or withdraw, which some analysts interpret as a sign of weakening administrative control. Independent verification remains difficult due to restrictions on access and communications. Political scientists often describe regime stability as resting on two core pillars: economic capacity and security control. In Iran's case, analysts argue that both areas are currently under severe strain. Security developments, in particular, are being described by regional experts as unusually serious. Under typical circumstances, domestic unrest is addressed through coordinated action by police and military forces. However, an image widely shared on social media and attributed to the Tehran metro system has drawn significant attention. The image appears to show uniformed personnel carrying a pre-1979 lion and sun flag rather than the official flag of the Islamic Republic. Analysts caution that the authenticity and representativeness of the image cannot be fully verified, but note that if accurate, it would suggest fractures in discipline or loyalty at lower levels of the security apparatus. Experts emphasize that symbolism within military ranks is often closely monitored, as it may indicate deeper morale or command issues. Multiple reports suggest that fear, long considered a key tool of state control, may be shifting. In several cities, particularly in the outskirts of Tehran and in rural areas, opposition sources claim that members of security forces have withdrawn from public spaces, sometimes abandoning vehicles or changing into civilian clothing. These claims remain difficult to independently confirm, but have been noted by open source monitoring groups. On the economic front, Iran is facing what economists describe as a critical situation. Reports indicate sharp declines at the Tehran Stock Exchange, continued depreciation of the national currency, and widespread commercial closures. Images showing shuttered shops in Tehran and Isfahan have been interpreted as evidence that parts of the traditional bazaar community are withholding economic participation. Historically, scholars note that the bazaar has played an influential role in Iranian political movements, including during the 1979 revolution. Analysts further argue that prolonged economic contraction directly affects the state's ability to maintain loyalty within its security forces. Iran's long-standing allocation of resources toward regional allies such as Hezbollah in Lebanon and the Houthis in Yemen has been documented by international observers. With sanctions tightening and revenues under pressure, experts suggest that sustaining both domestic security operations and external commitments has become increasingly difficult. Security analysts note that declining pay, shortages, and uncertainty can weaken morale among rank-and-file personnel. Stepping back from immediate events, several regional analysts frame the current unrest as a broader strategic crisis for the Islamic Republic and the ideological system it represents. Recent appearances by Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei on state television, featuring strong rhetoric against perceived foreign enemies, have been interpreted by some commentators as efforts to project strength amid mounting internal pressure. Political communication experts often note that such messaging is common during periods of acute instability. At the same time, an unusual development highlighted by analysts is the emergence of public appeals by some Iranian protesters toward countries long described by the government as adversaries, including Israel. While these appeals do not represent all protesters, experts argue that they indicate a profound breakdown in the regime's ideological narrative, particularly its foreign policy messaging. Slogans such as "Neither Gaza nor Lebanon, my life for Iran" have been widely documented in previous protest movements and are cited by researchers as expressions of domestic prioritization over regional interventionism. Analysts view these slogans as direct challenges to the state's long-standing regional strategy. International dynamics are also shaping the situation. The return of Donald Trump to the US presidency and the reinstatement of a maximum pressure sanctions approach toward Tehran have been widely discussed by policy analysts as factors limiting the Iranian government's financial and diplomatic options. Some experts suggest that concerns over potential international repercussions may constrain the government's response to internal unrest. In the United Kingdom, statements by certain lawmakers warning against external intervention, citing potential refugee flows, have drawn debate. Other analysts counter that political change in Iran could eventually result in reverse migration, with members of the Iranian diaspora returning home. These outcomes remain speculative and depend heavily on how events unfold. Regional security experts agree that instability in Iran would have significant implications for allied groups in Lebanon, Yemen, and Syria, many of which rely on Iranian financial and logistical support. A reduction in Tehran's capacity could therefore reshape regional power dynamics. In conclusion, analysts caution that while events remain fluid and outcomes uncertain, Iran is experiencing one of the most consequential periods of internal unrest since the establishment of the Islamic Republic. Whether this moment results in reform, prolonged instability, or systemic change is not yet clear. What is evident, experts agree, is that the current situation reflects deep-rooted political, economic, and social pressures that can no longer be easily contained. As with all rapidly unfolding events, continued verification and careful analysis will be essential in the days ahead.